This is Salud con Sabor. My name is Michelle Ureña. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm here with the founder of Boe Botanics, Nina Boe, who I have the pleasure of speaking with today. Um, Share with me a little bit about Boe Botanics and a little bit about what brought you into this world.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be with you and to have this conversation. For me, I mean, as you can see with the name, the Boe in Boe Botanics comes from my last name. My name is Nina Boe. And for me, kind of my journey into this space, full disclosure, was pandemic hobby, was I needed something else to do. And as being in New York City at the time, especially at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, very just a lot of time indoors and then working remotely and thinking I need things to do. And I love learning. I wanted to learn a little bit more. And so just kind of randomly found myself on social media seeing more things about herbalism. And there are just so many ways that things kind of dovetail with creators that I was interested in other things they posted and shared. And then as I felt more comfortable kind of going out in New York City as things kind of opened up more, I'm very much an extrovert. I love being around people, connecting with folks. I wanted to explore the city more and started finding places such as even the New York Botanical Garden, which a lot of folks either have been to or know about. One of my favorite discoveries was they have a continuing education program, so you can take classes either in person or online. And I was excited to come across some things like, oh, there was one about like botanical skincare. And I was like, okay, let me check that out. And it was a wonderful class taught by Arvelyn Hill, who's also an herbalist, in addition to a New York Botanical Garden employee at the time. And I just learned so much from her about kind of creating a few different products like bath salts or a lip balm or a lotion bar, things that, as someone who loves making things and creating things, it was a lot of fun to work with my hands and also just learn a little bit more. There were herbs that I had been familiar with, things that we may like the sense of, like rose and lavender. But there were other herbs that I was less familiar with. And I thought, this is something I could create, but also dive deeper and learn more about. So it was really just kind of from there. I never need an excuse to buy a new book or go to a bookstore. So I was like, what else can I learn? And just really kind of went from there.
Nice, that's nice. I feel like there's this trend for sure when it comes to whether it be skincare or just learning more about using food as medicine,
Mm,
just learning more about herbs from like a native standpoint, like what are natural herbs that grow in your state or in your area. I feel like it's definitely a topic that's trending.
yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that. Can you share, Nina, a little bit about favorite herbs or combination of herbs?
Absolutely. No, when I was thinking about that question, I was like, I could nerd out about maybe some that people were a little less familiar with. So I kind of went twofold. There's one that is speaking to me now, kind of, and then one that to your point, thinking about the work you do and folks you work with, it would be so easy to look at something like herbalism and say, this is interesting maybe, but a little daunting. There's a lot to unpack here. And at the same time, I think about go to your kitchen, like look through your spice cabinet and all of those things are coming from places where, wait a minute, you can use them in herbalism too, and you're probably already using it in your food. So when I was thinking about that question of my favorites, it was the one that's really speaking to me on a lot of levels right now is nettle or singing nettle. For anyone who's really interested into the where the families in this coming in, it's from a botanical family that has over 2,000 species of plants. And what I thought was really cool about it is it's actually found around the world. And when we dive a little bit deeper into the uses of it, across history, across cultures and communities. I just thought it was a really interesting, reading about some of the historical uses. And so we're looking at topically, it's used a lot for pain and inflammation. I made an infused oil with nettle that I turned into like a salve that my dad actually uses for his arthritis. That a friend of mine, his mom, is a big fan of it now. And then when I dove into the history, I saw my family background includes Scandinavia and Norway and Sweden. And so I was interested to see that, hey, even the Vikings, had uses for nettle, that many indigenous and native communities across North America used it both in terms of ceremonies or teas or even weaving into fibers. So I just thought it was a very resilient kind of herb. But then I thought, okay, for people who aren't going to be like me and nerd out over nettles, the one that everyone I think knows is mint is a great one. It's got a wonderful scent that, folks love incorporating into a lot of different things. I use like a peppermint lip balm. I actually made one right here. But it's also something that I think a lot of folks across so many backgrounds and communities have, oh, have a mint tea if you're not feeling like if your stomach's feeling a little uneasy or something like that. Or even if you go to the store, you'll see, peppermint drops for like if you're traveling or something like that. So I think it's so interesting to see all of this around us and think that's actually tied into a lot of herbal circles. And I think it's one that you can also use in culinary ways, like in salads, sauces, drinks. So it's a fun one.
I would agree. Mint is one of my favorites. I've noticed that there's different varieties of mint. Now that
Hmm.
I'm learning more about community gardening and going to different farmers markets, I'm seeing that there's even like a chocolate mint, I believe.
Hmm.
And so it's pretty fun to see the different varieties that they have out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about any herbs that you like to use most often. I know you mentioned some like salves or lip balms. Is there
Hmm.
anything that's your go-to?
Absolutely. I would say, especially right now in the winter, my skin gets really dry, and I also deal with psoriasis on my elbows in particular. So I will, if I'm going to make a salve or a lotion bar or even a lip balm, what I'll typically do is take, a jar and fill it about two-thirds of the way with like a dried herb, and then have what's called kind of an oil that's like a carrier oil that it will carry the infusion of the herbs and just let it sit for 4 to 6 weeks, kind of what they call the folk method of you're just very passive, you just put it in your pantry and then you strain that, and then you have an oil that my partner loves just doing that. You can just use this herbal infused oil, use it topically. I like making the process of, having a double boiler, melting down some wax and other things to make a salve. So I use that very often with just kind of like, my hands are feeling dry because I'm sitting by the window. So it's just I love making that kind of like topical stuff, but I think in terms of like my daily use, I think another way I've personally what I like doing is also just like having like making it like a tea, just a simple infusion with hot water. And so, that example of a peppermint tea is something for digestive support. And then when you dive into it, there's so many other ones that you see have a lot of other like nutritional benefits. Like there's so many that have, vitamin C, vitamin E, antioxidant. So it's a really interesting world to dive into and think about, oh, this is a blend that I might like the smell of, but it also helps me get my vitamins.
Nice, nice. And I noticed that also is a big trend as well when it comes to just finding natural ailments for common conditions. I know you
Hmm.
mentioned the psoriasis and the
Hmm.
arthritis. Some of the clients that I've been working with, they might suffer from high blood pressure or high blood sugar, or might
Hmm.
have trouble sleeping. Is there anything that you've maybe come across that anything that any types of herbs that may be beneficial or should stay away from maybe if you have certain conditions?
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And I will say this is my time, as I like to say, for a quick disclaimer that again, I'm very much on my herbalism journey. I am not a clinical herbalist. Your fun fact, the takeaway, there's actually in the United States, there's no national federal certification for herbalism like there is for nutrition and other things. Perhaps in the future there might be, but right now it's something there are a lot of really reputable schools and herbalists to study under. So what I will say is take a sizable grain of salt. Please do your own research as well. Please also consult with your medical providers. But also just dive into learning about what some of these things might be. Because to your point, there may be some of these things that I'll explore that might have counterindications if you're taking a certain medication. Um, so in terms of some of those points, I think one of the ones that I really appreciated learning about, say if we're looking at heart health and heart support, there's an hawthorn berry is one that has historically been used for that. When we're looking at concerns for things like nausea and digestion, that's where you might find some of the ones that you might already encounter in your kitchen, for example. Okay, we've already talked about peppermint, but then we're talking about things like ginger is also really great. And for folks who may be tuning in or familiar with Ayurvedic medicine, and we're talking like looking at India and South Asia, some of the herbs and herbs and that you might find in Ayurvedic medicine, things like ginger, turmeric, etc. There's going to be some of those that also have really great digestive support, for example. Um, I've also been going down the rabbit hole lately of traditional Chinese medicine and wanting to learn more as well. And so we're looking at different schools of thought and framing about how we have these conversations about the different systems in our body. And so sometimes there may be some of these that, again, that in looking at things like hawthorn, for example, is one that's very commonly known in herbal circles for heart and for cardiac support and blood pressure. And at the same time, if you're already taking a blood pressure medication, this is where you might want to stop, do some reading, talk with your provider, and figure out, well, what would be a safe supplement to take. Some of these things that we commonly use in our kitchen, for example, like ginger, turmeric, mint, are fairly considered to not really have any counterindications unless you, of course, have an allergy, in which case, please avoid. But there's going to be some of these points that, to your point of when we get these like tea blends, for example, there are a lot of products that say, oh, this is great for, say, detoxing. And it's like, well, at the same time, there may be many of these herbs that when you dive into them have historically been used for some of these purposes, like flushing toxins out of like the liver and kind of encouraging circulation. But at the same time, you want to do your research and understand, okay, maybe I might want to try just an individual herb as a tea infusion and see how my body responds to it. Because it's better to kind of, it's like when you say get a hair dye or a new beauty product, you might want to do a patch test on your skin, see how you respond to it before you put it all over your face or your hair. So similar kind of thing.
Exactly. I definitely agree. I would say start with baby steps. And if you're not so familiar, do a little bit of research. And I always say explore what's in either your garden, your backyard, if
Mm-hmm.
not local market, and see what's selling there and start from there. I agree. Starting with like a tea, and then going into maybe other supplements. I know
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned earlier tinctures and like
Mm-hmm.
other topical
Yeah.
solutions. Tell me, Nina, a little bit about what would you, I know you mentioned a little bit about what you recommend for certain skin conditions. Is
Mm-hmm.
there anything that you would recommend for like just to stay up to date on top of research when it comes to herbalism or
Mm-hmm.
herbs?
Absolutely. For sources and things like that, like where to explore. Yeah, I think there's one of the big names that I first encountered in my learning journey was her name is Rosemary Gladstar. A lot of folks consider her kind of the godmother of Western herbalism and modern herbalism. She's in her late 70s now, does not look like it. I mean, she's been doing herbalism and like been around all of this, I think, since her teens, and has been active in herbal circles, including teaching and founding her own school of herbalism for decades. I personally, especially lately, it's too cold to go anywhere. I work remotely. I like tuning into something from my computer. So I've been looking at a few courses online. There are plenty of online schools and entire courses, but if you're like me, I kind of like want to find something that's a little more bite-sized and financially affordable. So I've been doing a lot lately with Herbal Academy. They've got a nice array of learning at different price points and a lot of different printed resources. And then again, I mentioned, my first couple classes at New York Botanical Garden. If you have a place you can go yourself. There's also stores. If you go to places where you might buy herbs and buy products, they might sometimes have workshops. One of my favorite ones in the New York area is called Flower Power. I'm actually going to a workshop on lavender with them on Sunday. And yeah, there's just a lot of folks that, and then the more I take classes or read about folks, I follow them online. I look them up and say, let me see what they're doing. Have they published something? Um, and I know we've talked about it a little bit already, but just kind of say a shout out to thinking about which traditions you want to learn more about, whether it's Ayurvedic medicine or traditional Chinese medicine or indigenous and native herbal traditions. A friend of mine just gifted me a book for Christmas that was looking at North American Native American traditional like herbal medicine. So I'm a big fan of let me learn more about different traditions and understanding. And as folks explore resources, I really beg of folks to please think critically, ask questions, analyze where's this information coming from. And I say that really earnestly because unfortunately, we're also lately seeing a lot of books that have been created by AI, or at least with the help of AI. And personally, I'm starting to get a little skeptical of those sources when we're talking remedies and recipes for things that folks are either putting on or in their bodies. So always ask questions, explore where is this coming from, who put this together, are they known in herbal circles, are some of these remedies things that I've seen other herbalists talk about as well. So I always encourage folks to please have a thinking cap on.
I would definitely second that, Nina. I think that especially when it comes to nutrition and dietetics, at least that's how we were trained to look at studies that have been heavily researched,
Hmm.
especially like you had mentioned with the ginger, with mint, turmeric. Those have been things that have been studied significantly. And so
Hmm.
there's been proof that shows, or evidence-based proof that shows that these ingredients or these herbs are beneficial for us. So thank
Yeah,
you for sharing more about that. Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah. And the next question I want to go over is just a little bit about what you're working on now, maybe any upcoming events, any plans for Boe Botanics. Where do you see it in in the near future?
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I've been kind of in this winter phase of learning a lot, and I'm definitely continuing that over the next couple months. But at the same time, that example I gave earlier of, hey, how an easy way to create an herbal infused oil, well, that takes 4 to 6 weeks. Well, if it takes time and I want to be ready for the spring, the winter has been a lot of preparation as well. So my partner is kindly letting me take over the pantry with a bunch of jars and I've got a lot of some of the things that this last year was my first year doing kind of local farmers markets, which was really exciting. So I definitely hope to do that the same in the southern Connecticut area and some other places. So there's some products that I've seen kind of sell well. I've seen a lot with different herbal salves and lotion bars, lip balms, of course. Everyone forgets a lip balm when they travel or in their car or in their purse. So some things are helpful mainstays and things that I can kind of amend as I go through. But I'm just really excited to establish and cultivate more community connections and relationships. You mentioned, community gardens. Like when we moved in, I was so excited because we are just down the street from a fantastic urban farm. Shout out to Fairgate Farms in
That's
Stamford.
awesome.
And, just kind of getting to know folks. And like, so last year I picked out my own lavender and yarrow flowers. Yarrow is kind of, it looks almost like chamomile. It's a great little flower that you could even say if you're hiking and you get a cut and you're bleeding, if you spy some yarrow, you could literally just chew it up really quick, make a quick little poultice, put it on your cut, and it would help stop the bleeding. It's a great healing herb. Topically, you can also ingest it in teas, and it has some other great reasons. But saw they had a bunch of lavender and yarrow, so I thought, let me pick some. I dried it and infused it into an oil, and then I turned it into a salve where I just donated my time and material and gave it to the farm to support their fundraising efforts because, they're providing community meals for folks who are experiencing food insecurity and something that I felt like, hey, this is part of my community and it's just a little way that I can help kind of both support what they're doing and help them fundraise for that. So it's
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing about that, Nina. And I know that that's definitely a big topic in the last few years, especially. when it comes to just building more community, when it comes to, because in this world of social media, I feel like that's something that's been lost a little bit, is that
Yeah.
community aspect. That was one of my goals for last year, actually, was to learn more about local community gardens and farmers, and learn more about how, where does our food come from and how does it
Yeah.
grow, and how can we learn more about growing our own gardens if we have access to it. And so I appreciate you sharing that so much, to be able to tie that together,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to tie in not just community, um, but being able to learn more about where our food comes from,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to sustain ourselves in a way that gives us sovereignty. I feel like that's been, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I feel like this is a time where I feel like it's needed most. Just the
Mm-hmm.
political climate just
Yeah.
feels like it's very negative, and I feel like that is a source of positivity. It's a source of light, at
Yeah.
least in my eyes. So I appreciate you sharing that, Nina.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I think it's such a great way to build relationships, to support people. And like you said, even like when I remember when I dropped off some other stuff at a market where they were going to put out the sows, and one of the farmers there, she was like, "Oh, let me get a picture." And so I was helping set things up, and someone's like, "Well, what is this? What do they do?" And I was like, "Well, here's a great opportunity to meet people, to connect, and to kind of help pass along some of that knowledge."
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, I appreciate your time, Nina, and I'm excited to hear more about the future endeavors with your business. As this passion grows, it's definitely growing within me as well. I hope that it ignites something in the viewers as well, to be able to learn a little bit more about where their food comes from, a little bit
Absolutely.
learn more about herbalism in general, and maybe connect with a local herbalist like yourself.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm likewise excited to hear. I've appreciated all the questions that you've randomly like messaged me and said, "Hey, someone mentioned this. What has this been used for?" Like someone asked me and I get to talk about it. It's so exciting. So likewise, and I wish you all the success with Salud con Sabor. And who knows? I need to start learning about more Dominican and Caribbean herbs now so I can figure things out even more.
Yes, yes, I would love to share a little bit more. I'm doing some research as well. That's one of my goals for 2026. So I will definitely share more herbs, or at least remedies. I feel like now during flu season, there's a lot of
Mm.
like teas,
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of maybe like stews or things that can be like warming, hearty meals that we
Mm-hmm.
can use herbs in. And so I will definitely be sharing that with you as well.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay, I know we're at the end, but to your point, cold and flu season, absolutely. This is something where it comes up time and time again. And you mentioned warming, and I love that because that's very much something that I've seen time and again with like Ayurvedic medicine. And so some of the points that we're seeing, ginger and turmeric, for example, are considered like warming spices. And to tie it back all again, I love connecting things. But Rosemary Gladstar, the herbalist I mentioned, she, when she was younger, she kind of helped kind of coin the term for a very popular kind of cold and flu wellness remedy, what's commonly known as fire cider. And it went through this whole thing. It became very popular to the point where someone even tried to trademark it. And there was this big, huge, long kind of court just back and forth with so many community herbalists just saying this is something that is a community remedy that so many folks of so many backgrounds, like you can't trademark that. And eventually it all worked out. So if you look up Rosemary Gladstar fire cider, she even collected a book of so many different recipes of folks from literally around the world, their interpretations of, hey, throw in some horseradish, throw in some ginger, some turmeric, apple cider vinegar, lemon, honey, let it sit for a bit, and then you take some sips of that when you start feeling a little under the weather. There's so many different things to your point that we can say, hey, everyone might get sick once in a while. What can we do about it?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I actually saw, and I appreciate that, Nina. That's something that I didn't really think about, when it comes to kind of like those local remedies, or like passed down remedies from either family or just cultural, or even just locally. I feel like that's something that's really important to kind of keep at a place of what's the word? Like keep it in a place where it's can't think of the word, but you want to honor that, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to respect that, keep that respect
Yeah.
there. So that's something that I'm trying to do as well, moving forward as I research a little bit more as well. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that, Nina.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you again. I look forward to supporting everything you're doing in the future, collaborate, all of this, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nina. Take care.
Bye.